Welcome to episode 22 of the G2 on 5G, the latest inside scoop on everything 5G. We cover 6 topics in about 15 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, and joining me again this week is my fellow analyst, partner in crime, Anshel. So let's get started with my first topic. Late breaking news, Mobile World Congress 2021 will go on, but it's actually been pushed out. So traditionally the show has been in the February timeframe next year, and there's no question why. They want to put a little more distance between COVID and the show. It looks like the show will be in the summer timeframe. This should be interesting for lots of Europeans that like to take their summer vacations. They're very prescriptive about that. I know that for a fact because I, back in the day, worked for Dassault Systems, a French software company. But more importantly, it kind of got me thinking, what would be some of the anticipated themes and related announcements? And one, big probability will be Open RAN. That's been actually a huge discussion as of late. It started with discussions on Capitol Hill in Washington about how to right size the domestic supply chain for 5G. So I think that'll definitely be a topic. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking we're gonna see come out of next year's show?
I think it's gonna be a lot more heavy on mainstream 5G, so lower cost 5G.
Yeah.
And talking about non-smartphone use cases a lot more,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like right now everything's smartphone related.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna be a lot more fixed wireless access stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's gonna be a lot more IoT related 5G talk, and more actual doing than talking, because I feel like people have been talking about non-smartphone 5G use cases for a while, but
Yeah.
actually implementing them is going to be the big part.
I agree, and it's interesting. So Huawei Connect is going on this week as well, virtually. I would normally be in Shanghai for that. I've been there the last 3 years, and I was impressed. Obviously Huawei is very embattled in this part of the country, and world, and even in Europe. When you look at what's going on in the UK and that sort of thing. But I was impressed with their focus on use cases, and they've had over the last 2 days a lot of customers on stage with them, and it's ranged from fintech to manufacturing to smart city. And I got to agree with you. It's got to be more than the smartphone, and I'm looking forward to some of the use cases that'll be shared there. But we'll see, and hopefully you and I will be able to attend next year. I'm dying to get back on a plane. So let's shift to your first topic this week. And there was a small cell announcement from Samsung, right?
Yeah, so Samsung announced a new small cell. This new small cell is specifically a millimeter wave small cell for 5G.
Mm-hmm.
They are building it in partnership with Qualcomm for Verizon.
Okay.
So this product is called the Link Cell,
Mm-hmm.
and it supports 28 gigahertz and 100 megahertz channels. So it's a very small device. It looks honestly like a normal enterprise Wi-Fi AP that you'd
Yeah.
find in any building.
Mm-hmm.
So the size-wise, it's very attractive. And this is kind of going to be the type of device that solves the indoor 5G coverage problem, both for
Mm-hmm.
millimeter wave and for other signal, because inside of the building, as long as it's located in the ceiling, perhaps should be able to get line of sight pretty much from anywhere inside that building, as long as you don't have too many walls obstructing it. But I mean, the reality is, if you look at how enterprise APs are deployed today, they're not spaced out very far apart because you want to have ubiquitous coverage.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting, and I think it's a big deal because in building 5G is going to be an important application for 5G.
I agree. And I'm also not surprised to see Qualcomm jumping into the infrastructure side of things, right? I mean, they've been driving the 5G ecosystem from a device perspective, and we've talked on prior podcasts about their tiered approach so that they can support a range of different phones from the low end, mid to the very high end, some of these foldable designs that we're seeing as well. And I know that they're also, Qualcomm's partnered with Airspan Airspan is in the small cell space as well. They've been the manufacturer of, in the past, the Sprint Magic Box. And so I think you'll start seeing some, probably some announcements from Airspan in the not too distant future as well. But I agree with you. This is a critical linchpin to supporting 5G indoor and certainly millimeter wave, right, with that short
Right.
propagation.
And that's that's going to give 5G speed, real high 5G speeds indoors. Obviously, you still need to have the networking connectivity to make that possible with enough bandwidth. But these link cells are using Qualcomm's 5G RAN platform. So this is definitely a much more industry standard application, and it'll be interesting to see what other vendors come out with similar products to what Samsung has.
I agree. Awesome. Good stuff. Well, let's move to my second topic this week. And AT&T announced just a few days ago that they're going to be providing network as a service to 3 Air Force bases in the United States. And there was also an indication that there would be some sort of, delivery of 5G, obviously, along with that. And it's quite interesting because my third topic, I'm going to go into a little more detail about the DoD and private networking. But, this is interesting. Military is a mission critical, service to our country, and it requires the utmost security and that sort of thing. I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing, private 5G deployments occurring within the federal government. You got any thoughts here, Anshel?
I think it's interesting because Verizon's also deploying 5G on military bases.
We talked about that a few podcasts ago,
previous
right?
podcast.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see, Verizon and AT&T are both deploying 5G on military bases. I think it's, it fits for what the government is trying to do with modernizing the military, and that's one of the reasons why they're able to justify securing 5G networks. So I think because the government has confidence in these networks being more secure, they're able to adopt 5G much more quickly than I think other countries are, and will hopefully give our military a strategic advantage in terms of having better connectivity, more secure connectivity, and hopefully will propel the industry and defense department further, along with all of the branches of the DoD.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it as well, I don't have any sort of security clearance, but when you think about what 5G will be able to do from a latency and a throughput perspective and tactile operation, you can only imagine what the military applications for that would be, right? I mean, not just beyond communication, but there've got to be some very, very interesting use cases. And we've talked about AR, VR applications beyond just consumer, right? So I think there are a whole host of things the military is probably kicking the tires on with, that they believe 5G is going to unlock. Wouldn't you agree?
The first customer of Microsoft's HoloLens is the U.S. military. So, they're going to want something to feed those headsets with real-time, data. The problem with having, a very modern infrastructure like this and training with it is when you're no longer in the field with that kind of connectivity, what changes? So it's both a blessing and a curse, but I think there's a lot of applications out there that will make potentially 5G a big opportunity for the military, especially when you consider that they do operate on so many proprietary wireless standards already,
right?
That maybe unifying under one standard that isn't proprietary might actually help them with interoperability and being able to operate in places where maybe they don't have their own network set up, or to set up their own network on the fly as needed.
Yeah. Think about it like in a military war theater, to be able to stand up a 5G base station and provide communication in maybe a remote area. that isn't served. Could be quite interesting. I mean, obviously you have to have the spectrum, to do that.
Right.
But yeah, it'll be super interesting. So it'll be cool to kind of keep tabs on that. Again, we talked about Verizon on a latter podcast, and now AT&T is jumping into the fray here. So we're seeing a theme. So let's move to your second topic, and you want to talk about an Amazon gaming platform, and we've talked about Wavelength in the past too, right? So there was a new announcement this week around that.
Yeah, so today, about a few hours ago, Amazon announced Luna, which is their cloud gaming platform, which is designed to compete with Google's Stadia and Microsoft's xCloud. And basically, it's the reason why we're talking about it at all is because cloud gaming is a huge 5G use case. Because you can game in the cloud over 5G with super low latency. And be able to experience it at local like experience, like it's a console playing off your home network. And that's kind of the idea, is being able to have a cloud gaming machine running and streaming to your phone or your tablet or your TV or whatever device you feel like. And this is a big deal because I think everybody kind of expected Amazon to do this, because AWS, most games run off of AWS. So having a cloud service almost seemed like a natural progression of what Amazon is doing in gaming. And Luna is $5.99 a month, but they also are going to have different channels for different publishers. So right now they have an Ubisoft channel. So you pay $5.99 a month, you get 100 games, but in addition to that, you can pay extra and subscribe to Ubisoft's library of games. And the idea would be that other publishers could take advantage of this and offer their content on the Luna platform, kind of like how they have Amazon Prime Video, where you have CBS All Access, HBO, and Prime Video. It's kind of the same kind of concept. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it turns out long term. They're saying that they can deliver 4K 60 over a 35 megabit connection. But in order to get that kind of a quality image, you have to maintain a minimum of 35 megabits. So you can't have any drops below that, otherwise you lose quality. So naturally, you're going to want to have a pretty solid 5G connection if you want to stream 4K 60.
I'm curious. So you mentioned Ubisoft. So it's sort of like a kind of a publisher direct delivery model. What about the operators? What about Verizon, Telefonica, AT&T, 3 UK? Are they going to be able to leverage this platform, be able to monetize it, and drive some ARPU?
So I don't think they've talked about that yet. And I think it's because it's so new that they haven't really probably gotten all of the carriers on board yet in terms of understanding what value proposition it has.
Sure.
Especially when you consider that they're also competing against Stadia and Microsoft Xbox Game Pass Ultimate.
Got it.
So I think it's going to be something. Samsung, when they launched the Note 20, did offer a gaming bundle which included Microsoft Cloud Gaming Service. So there are OEMs that are trying to bundle cloud gaming with their devices. But I have a feeling that there is a chance we'll also see operators do the same thing. The real issue is that operators are not standing these up themselves, so there would have to be a white labeled service or bundled as a gaming plan. So I think what's going to happen is once these cloud services are finally cemented in what they can do and what they offer, and the operators have rolled out their standalone networks, you'll start to see a gaming slice where you pay for gaming as opposed to a certain amount of data.
From an operator perspective. I envision that as well.
I just think it'll take time, and I don't think anybody wants to talk about it until they actually have network slicing working. But I think that's going to be the long haul play for this cloud gaming application for operators, at least.
No, I agree. And Amazon, I've spent time with AWS, and they don't want to be competitive. I mean, they want to enable these use cases. So to your point, it's probably very early, sort of in the journey on this one. But I expect operators will want to jump all over this, private label it, white label it, do whatever.
I don't see Amazon being as much in your face as a brand with Luna. I see
Yeah.
them wanting to allow publishers to leverage it as a platform.
Hmm.
Stadia seems a little bit more in your face, and xCloud is very heavily Microsoft branded.
Yeah.
Um,
Xbox. Yeah.
so yeah, it's not that, I don't think it's necessarily the same thing. Plus,
Yeah.
they bought Bethesda and ZeniMax last week, so
Hmm.
that acquisition is going to be a big deal for 5G because they're going to have the strongest content library of anybody when it comes to offering cloud gaming.
Interesting.
And
Good
then there was
stuff.
a
Yeah.
but there's a
Yeah.
second part of the announcement. Well, not related, but still cloud related. AWS Wavelength added 3 more cities to their trials with
Hmm.
Verizon. So they added Atlanta, New York City, and DC. In addition to the West Coast cities that they had announced, I think it was San Francisco and Seattle. So I think it's very interesting to see that they're continuing to expand into pretty big metro areas that will give them more opportunities to test out the benefits of 5G with Amazon's wavelength.
Yeah, I know. Stay tuned. I think that, AWS calls those their zones, their wavelength zones. And stay tuned. You may see yours truly in a future online piece talking a little bit more about wavelength, but I can't divulge all the details at this point. So again, stay tuned. Let's move to my third topic this week, and I alluded to this earlier. Kind of dovetails into my second topic with the Air Force. But this week, the Department of Defense basically sent out not really a tender or an RFQ or an RFP, but they kind of put out an exploratory RFI around how could they deploy and operate their own private 5G network. And I jumped on this immediately, and I think I tweeted something out. It's like, well, it's not easy. You're going to need the help of the big infrastructure providers, like the Ericssons and the Nokias and the Samsungs of the world. There's going to be a learning curve, right? And this, we talked about the whole modernization, sort of aspect of the military. Obviously, the DoD is in charge of the military, all
The
the
umbrella.
branches, yeah, the umbrella. And so this was interesting from my perspective, and I think this might lead, as I kind of alluded to before, the possible deployment of private 5G networks. Again, getting back to the need to secure things and sort of manage your own destiny. And with the Open RAN discussions going on, there are domestic software vendors and companies like Mavenir that can supply part of the RAN. And then you've got disaggregated components that are available from the likes of Cisco and HPE, as well. So I mean, I'm curious, what are your thoughts about that announcement this week?
I guess my question is, do you know of any vendors that are specifically building their infrastructure for 5G to be compliant with the Department
Military
of
spec?
Defense?
Not to my knowledge.
I just think
Mil
it's
spec.
interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah, it
Because
is
I think there are military specs for security,
for sure.
and I'm curious to whether or not anyone's even building equipment for that purpose yet, or if they've been building it and just haven't said anything about it yet. But I think that's something interesting because that's an opportunity for some vendors that might want to go after that. Um,
Hmm.
because I think realistically, 5G is an infrastructure. Um, it's fundamental infrastructure, right? Because it's connectivity, it's internet, and nowadays everything runs off the internet.
Yeah,
So, the government, specifically the DoD, is going to want to have, a very specific set of requirements that these vendors, adhere to
yeah.
in order to ensure that their private 5G networks are secure, even more secure than, what they are today.
Yeah, yeah, and I read through some of the questions, and they're very early in the stages. I mean, it's very exploratory. It's almost like the DoD is asking very, very basic one-on-one questions about what's required to stand up a network and operate a network. So, and I agree with you. I mean, at some point, mil spec will probably come into play. But yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of keep our eyes on this area, and it's to see if there'll be other operators not only in the U.S. but globally that are supporting their military, infrastructure, and as well as providing those those kind of critical services for first responders and those sorts of folks. So let's shift to your third topic this week, and it's about 3GPP release 17.
Yeah, so right now our 5G networks are operating on release 15. Release 16 has already been ratified and is going to be rolling out over the next year or so, maybe 18 months. But release 17, which is the next step in 5G's evolution, was supposed to be released, I believe, next year, or at least finalized next year. And now they're saying that in December, when they meet again, they're going to probably decide how long they're going to delay that freeze. The freeze is when they lock down the spec.
Right.
And that freeze may be delayed anywhere from 3 to 6 months due to the fact that the 3GPP have not been able to meet in person. And a lot of these meetings are very important because having the people meet in person ensures secrecy of the IP of the companies that are helping develop the standards. So 3GPP meetings are not public. You have to be a member, and most of the results of the meetings are not published publicly until they release a few work items or the final spec. So they're pretty limited in the information that they publicly release. So because of that, they don't really have the infrastructure yet, I think, to fully meet in a way that I think would allow them to finalize a spec as quickly as they used to. So I think this may actually delay 5G's progress anywhere from 3 to 6 months, but hopefully it doesn't, because people will have already anticipated some of the subjects that they are discussing and they're planning to freeze into the standard. Right. So it may not cause too much of a delay, but if the spec doesn't exist, then nobody can officially support it. And if they can't officially support it, then it can't be utilized. So because of that, stuff like if they had delayed, release 15, then we wouldn't have standalone yet. So, I think it's important that we have these specs and that we, don't have too much of a delay, but at the same time that we, don't miss things that need to be in the standard, ASAP.
Yeah, I agree. And when you look at some of the deployment activity from the operators with with new radio this year, Rakuten, others did point to COVID as an excuse for slowing deployment. And then obviously with distancing and that sort of thing, I mean physically just to get up on those towers and to hang the necessary equipment, that's certainly been slowed as well. So it's no surprise to me. I mean, to your point, hopefully they can recover pretty quickly and work double time, so that we don't get too far behind there. But yeah, certainly there have been some silver linings and some positive aspects of COVID, but this is definitely a negative aspect. So we'll just have to wait and see how it kind of rolls out. So, well, hey, buddy, another great podcast this week. Why don't you take us home?
Sure. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there would like us to provide insight on a specific 5G topic for a future podcast, please reach out to us on social media. Will is at Will Poundtech, and I'm at Anshel Sog. We hope you have a great weekend, and please tune in again next week.